For those who don't know me, I'm Pain, a 10K MMR coach and player. I've been coaching for a couple of years now and have more than 3,000 coaching hours under my belt. I've helped multiple students reach Immortal from different brackets. In this video, I will talk about what I would do if I was stuck in 2K MMR as a carry. If you apply everything correctly in this video, there is a 0% chance you will not get out of 2K. You can even get to 4K MMR and I'll explain why, so make sure not to skip anything. My idea about the carry role and gaining MMR is very simple, and it is not limited to MMR brackets. It can be applied to any bracket. The carry role is all about item timings. If you're getting better timings than the enemy, you will win most of your games. The way MMR works is that you take MMR from your opponents. How would you do that? By beating them. What is required of you to beat them? By playing better than them. This essentially means that you have to do something better than everyone else in your bracket, and all players in your bracket will have a common mistake. Item timings are directly proportional to how farmed you are, so keeping that in mind, let's see what is the average net worth of a 2K MMR carry player at 10 and 20 minutes and how it correlates to winning and losing. This is a student of mine, and as you can see here, when I open his losses, his net worth is around 7 to 8K at 20 minutes and his opponents have more or less the same. In some of his losses, he is 10K as well, but the enemy is very close to his net worth. You could argue that, well, if his average net worth in his losses is 7K to 8K and his opponents have around the same, so why does he lose? If you want to get out of the bracket you are in, you have to play better than the players in that MMR bracket, not the same as them. Otherwise, how are you better than them? When I open his wins, his net worth is always above 10K at 20 minutes and he's always one item ahead of his opponents. This indicates that he's playing much better than his MMR bracket, thus resulting in him winning most of his games. The idea is to be better than your opponents, and this is the easiest and the most basic fundamental of the carry role that you can take advantage of till the point where you get to an MMR bracket where everyone can match that, and I can assure you that shit is not happening until at least 4K MMR. With that said, let's discuss the ideal net worth numbers that you should aim for as a carry. At 10 minutes, you need to have a minimum of 4K net worth. The more, the better. At 20 minutes, you need to have a minimum of 10.5K net worth. The more, the better. You can get 11 or 12K easily as well if you are playing innate farmers and know what you're doing. Sometimes the 10.5K net worth won't be enough either if the enemy has close to the same net worth as you. Remember, the goal is to be significantly ahead of the enemy, not close to them. Now, how do you get to the point where you are capable of doing this consistently? Well, there are two ways. For net worth, you need gold, and you can get gold from either killing the enemy or farming creeps. Killing the enemy is not possible in every game, but hitting creeps is something that can be done every game, hence making it a more consistent and reliable option. So let's discuss how hitting creeps can help you get to these numbers. In order to get 4K plus net worth at 10 minutes and 10K plus at 20 minutes, you need a minimum amount of 60 last hits at 10 minutes and 200 last hits at 20 minutes. 2K MMR players are nowhere near these numbers in the majority of their games. On the screen, you can see the last hits of the same student in his wins and the rest of the players in the game. Keeping this in mind, I would advise you to select 3 heroes who are innate farmers because some heroes are quite literally incapable of getting to these numbers. Heroes like Spectre and Ricky quite literally have the worst farming mechanics in the game until they get a bunch of items. They are more kill focused than farm focused. The heroes I will suggest you play are Sven, Luna, and Medusa. These are all innate farmers, are quite easy to play, and can be played in any meta. Once you learn how to consistently get these last hit numbers on these heroes, which you will after applying this video, you can move on to heroes without innate farming capability, but do buy it later, aka Battle Fury or Maelstrom carriers, such as Ursa, Anti-Mage, Juggernaut, and Phantom Assassin. You can practice this on them as well, but if you want to speed up the process, I would recommend innate farmers only. Now that we have net worth plus last hit goals and heroes sorted, let's talk about what you need to do in order to get to these numbers. First, we're going to focus on the first 10 minutes, which is our 60 last hits goal. The first 10 minutes are usually the entirety of the laning phase, and that means we have to really polish our laning phase to the point we are winning 90% of our lanes. There are a bunch of things you need to learn and apply to make that possible. The first thing I want you to do is have a clear idea about your game plan and what kind of lane situation you are going to be in. Game plan is basically knowing what you are aiming for in the game. For example, if you're playing Sven, your initial game plan is to get your Treads plus Mask of Madness and Echo Saber by 13 to 14 minutes. If you're playing Medusa, your initial plan is to get your Treads and Manta by 14 minutes to 15 minutes. Every hero wants to buy a different item, and you can check the timings of your favorite hero on the Road to Pro tracker. Being aware of this plan is very crucial so you know what your job and goals are in the game. You do not care about anything else, only about following this plan religiously. After this, you need to think about the kind of lane you are going to be in, and this is really important. This decides the outcome of your lane the most. Since you're a carry, you're going to be playing against a soft support and an offlaner. Determine who that is going to be in the enemy team and then ask yourself, is this a good matchup for me or a bad one? Based on that, you adjust how you want to play. If it's a favorable matchup, you can play aggressively, and if it's an unfavorable matchup, you have to absolutely play defensive and not make any aggressive moves. Just having this idea in your mind before the horn will put you ahead of everyone else, who is potentially autopiloting every game. Once you figure out your lane matchup, now you have to buy the right starting items based on the lane you are going to be in. There are 3 types of starting item combinations. One is catered towards physical damage, the second is catered towards magical or spell damage, and the third is catered towards both physical and spell damage combined. Based on the lane matchup you are going to be in, you buy what you feel is most suitable. For example, if you are in a lane versus Enigma, it is better to go for the first build as it provides you with more stats for last hitting rather than the other 2 builds where you will have less damage because you will be investing in a magic stick. I could give more examples, but I want to keep this video as short as possible. I have a bunch of other carry videos where I go over starting items in detail that you can check out in the top right corner. Once your starting items are sorted, now you have to improve your raw last hitting. You might think, what the fuck is this? Last hitting? Why should I work on that? The best of the best players, I'm talking literal pro players, they practice last hitting every day. So what makes you think you don't need it? There's an absurd amount of lasses that you and I both miss in every laning phase, so please work on this because to get to the 60 lasses at 10 minutes, this is very crucial. My best practice for this is an arcade game called Training Polygon. Download that game and inside the game, play the Lasser Trainer with your favorite heroes for 10 minutes every day before you queue a game. It's a good warm-up, put on some music, aim for a high result every time, and you will improve in no time. The next thing you want to work on is creep equilibrium. Creep equilibrium is maintaining the position of the creep waves at a point that is favorable for you. For carries, it is near their tower and away from the enemy's tower, which is a dangerous place. The simplest explanation behind why this is important is that if the wave is in front of your tower, you are less susceptible to dying. Whereas, if it's in front of the enemy's tower, you have to run all the way back to your tower for safety. Your tower is your safe haven. The further you are from it, the more likely you will die. This basically means that if you don't maintain creep equilibrium in front of your tower and it pushes away from your tower, you will be left with 2 options. You move forward and as a result, lose all your HP and potentially die. Number 2, you stay away from the wave and lose all the creeps till you figure out a way to bring the wave back towards your tower. With that said, to maintain creep equilibrium, keep these things in mind. Don't auto-attack the creeps, which results in the lane pushing into the enemy. Don't aggro the creeps under the tower unless you have no other option. Aggro to the side if you have to. The tower kills the creeps faster, resulting in your wave pushing into the enemy. Make sure the number of creeps is the same on both sides. If the enemy has more creeps than you do, the wave will push into you and the enemy can dive you, which is bad. You want to maintain the position in front of your tower, not inside your tower. Next up is Creep Aggro, one of the most rewarding mechanics in the laning phase. This mechanic is going to be the difference between you getting owned in a hard lane or not. In simple terms, Creep Aggro is when you issue an attack command on the enemy hero while standing in 500 range of the enemy creeps, which results in the enemy creeps getting mad at you and they start chasing you for a while. Why is this important? Well, in hard lanes, you can keep making the enemy creeps mad so you can force them away from a bad position to a good position. This mechanic is really important. I've made videos that explain both creep equilibrium and creep aggro in detail. On the top right side, you will see a prompt where you can learn about both these fundamentals, especially creep aggro. In that video, you will have multiple uses of the creep aggro, so definitely check it out if you already haven't. After this, we have a lane mechanic that I haven't seen anyone talk about that I recently made a video about. I call it the prioritization system and it's a game changer, especially in lanes where you're supposed to absolutely cook the enemy. In Dota, if your hero is standing and doing nothing at any point of the game, even if you're standing and buying items, you are simply considered as AFK. The same thing exists in the laning phase. Waiting for a creep to be low HP so you can last it or deny it, that's you being AFK. Sounds stupid, but it's true. I'll explain why. In the laning phase, you have 3 things that you focus on: last hitting, denying, and harassing the enemy. Now, most players have absolutely zero clue when to do what. I'm certain that 99% of 2K MMR players have zero idea when to do what. I say that because even immortal players don't know it that well. You will only see really high MMR players, aka pro players, do this properly. So what is the secret? It's very simple. You prioritize last hits first, followed by denies, and then harassing the enemy. What does this mean? If you see that in the lane there is going to be nothing in the last hit or deny range in your next 1 or 2 attacks, you should harass, and when there is a creep in the last hit or deny range, you focus on that. By doing this, you are not going to miss any last hits while trying to harass the enemy, which I see a lot of people doing. This is the most basic explanation of it and will do the job, but there are certain situations where you cannot just hit the enemy because they might just outtrade you. I've done a detailed video on this, which will pop up on the right side. Watch it. It goes over planning plus the prioritization in depth. With that, our laning phase is sorted. Now we will move on to farming patterns in the lane and post lane. Without farming patterns, you aren't getting anywhere close to your last hit goals no matter what you do. I will also include a very questionable but result driven methodology in this for you so that you can get to your last hit goals easily. So what is the lane farming pattern and when do you start doing it? The lane farming pattern is when you stop holding the wave and push it purposely so you can have ample time to farm the side camps before the next creep wave arrives in the lane. When do you start doing that depends entirely on the type of hero you are playing and how strong you are. For example, if you're playing innate farmers and you're at least level 6, you can start doing that. That's 3 points in Mystic Snake and 2 points in Split Shot on Medusa, 3 points in Cleave plus Ultimate on Swen, and 3 points in Moonglaves for Luna. It's different for every hero, and I'm not going to list every single hero here. Get an idea based on what you've been given. All these spells are farming spells, so the more levels you have on them, the faster you can farm side camps. Now the main difference between the newest farming pattern in 7.38 and the ones before is the ancient camp. Ideally, you want to try to farm it every minute. To determine the best farming pattern for a particular scenario, you need to think about a couple of things. Number 1, safety. How safe is the place I am going to farm? Number 2, efficiency. How near is the camp to me? And how fast can I farm it? How much time do I have before I have to go back in the lane? Number 3, gold amount. How much gold is this camp going to give me? For example, 200 small camp creeps are much worse than 100 lane creeps. In terms of gold distribution, creep waves come first, followed by ancient camps, then large camps, then medium, and lastly, small camps. With that said, once you push out the lane into the enemy, now you have to think, is it safe for me to go and farm the large camp? If the answer is no, you should go behind your tower and farm the ancient camp if your hero is capable. If the answer is yes, you farm the large camp, and then when you push the next wave, you farm the ancient camp after. Every minute, you will have 2 creep waves, and every time you push a wave, you will have 15 to 20 seconds to farm something on the side. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? You basically keep doing this until you are forced out of it, and you determine that based on the 3 things we discussed just before: safety, efficiency, and gold amount. This was the lane farming pattern. After a certain point, you will start farming so fast that you will have more time to hit more camps. At that point, you get promoted from the lane farming pattern to an advanced farming pattern. I recently made an in-depth video on farming patterns on the new map, which has examples of different pros, Satanic, Yatora, and RTZ, and it has actual gold numbers and everything. It's going to pop up on the top right side. Check that out for your own good. Now for the questionable but result-driven methodology. If you find yourself struggling to get these last hit goals, I want you to start ignoring everything that's going on in the game. Whether it's the enemy taking your throne, whether they're absolutely cooking your team, whether they're taking Roche, it does not matter. You only care about your last hit goals and nothing else. Your victory is tied behind these goals. Follow this methodology and you will learn how to meet these last hit goals faster than everyone else. Sounds like griefing, but it's actually not. A lot of players just keep wasting time doing random shit, which makes them miss out on a lot of farm. With this mentality, you will not run into this situation. Well fellas, with all that said, there is no way you don't get these last hit numbers or your Networth goals. Now the last thing required for you to seal the deal and finally get to 3k MMR and call people below you 2k dogs is joining early fights while farming. While AFK farming is very lucrative and fun for some, it is not going to be enough for you to get to that 70 to 80% win rate mark. You need to use the net worth you accumulate and create impact in the game, otherwise what is the point of you being an item ahead of everyone else? Imagine a scenario where your team takes a fight versus 5 of the enemy heroes and you are the highest net worth in the game. Now if you don't join that fight and your team fights as 4, they would be fighting at a major disadvantage because the entirety of your net worth does not exist. There is no way your team is going to win that fight and the enemy can snowball off of that. Balancing farming and fighting is kind of hard, so I would ask you to not do that until you are consistently getting the last hit and net worth numbers we talked about at the start of the video. Only then you should work on this. Not every fight is joinable, and you should have concrete rules before joining fights. First and foremost, you need some timing to be able to join these fights. For example, if I'm Sven and I have Mask of Madness plus Echo and I have my ult, I'm strong enough to be impactful in these fights. At the same time, if I have Madness plus Echo Saber, but my ult is on cooldown, then it's pointless for me to join the fight. Similarly, if I'm playing Luna with Manta and I don't have Eclipse, there's no point of me joining the fight. So these timings matter a lot. They are different for every hero, and I'm only giving examples of the heroes that I recommended to you. The basic idea here is that you need to have everything that makes you the strongest hero in a fight. If you join a fight as Medusa without Stone Gaze, there's a very high chance of you dying because you have no escape. Keep these things in mind and join fights accordingly. Well, folks, with that said, congratulations. You are now a 3k MMR player, and if you keep polishing these fundamentals, you can also get to 4k in the same way. If you don't want to do this process by yourself, I offer coaching services that have helped tons of students. I have a package that offers unlimited coaching till you hit Immortal. You can check out my currently on sale discounted packages on my website PainDota.com or join my Discord linked in the description. The last slot is left at the discounted rate, so don't miss it. Other than that, do check out Dota Academy, a private community for Dota players. I hope the video was helpful, and do subscribe.